Yesterday I was talking to my friend, and somehow the conversation became about how much I have changed and stuff. And in my head, for a while, I have not noticed much of a change in me. For a very long time, I always felt as if I'm still 12 years old, as if I'm still behaving and acting like a child. But then I started to really think about it, and yeah, a lot has changed. And actually, a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, my other friend was like, we were talking, and he's kind of depressed and stuff. And I used to be also that way. I used to always just sit in my room and play guitar, and that's why I made so many videos, because I had nothing else for me. I just sat in my room and I did nothing besides listening to the Smiths and playing guitar. But anyways, my friend was like, how did you get out of that? How did you become social? Because now I'm like out every week. I have friends. I do a lot of stuff in my life. I feel like I'm not bored anymore, because I used to always feel bored. I used to always have nothing to say, nothing to do. I used to be depressed about how alone I am and how depressing everything is. But now it's like completely different, and I realized that I no longer feel this kind of sadness in me. I don't feel this grueling feeling of loneliness and boredom. Now it's more about I don't know, um, but all those conversations with my friends, they made me really think about it, and how, why, how did I change? How do people even change like that? Because I see, I meet a lot of people, and most of the people that I meet that are social have always been social. Like, they did not have to go in this transition from completely antisocial to social. But for me, I had a huge change in my personality. I mean, from when I was a child, I was a horrible child. I was constantly crying, screaming. There was no way to have conversation with me. I was a complete brat. Then in my pre-teen years, I was also a massive brat. Constant, all of this shit, just horrible person. And I think that a lot of people in my life thought that I will never grow up to be anything. But yeah, anyway, this long intro is to, because I try to say that even if you are currently, antisocial and very depressed, it doesn't mean that it has to stay this way forever. And your past does not determine who you will be in the future. Again, I was horrible person for the majority of my life. I was a horrible person with so many mental illness. I had no friends. I had nothing going for me, and every day I just felt like, oh, I just want to kill myself because everything is so bad. But eventually, when you try to start to take control of your life, that's when actual change can happen. I think that a lot of people in their head, they are stuck with this idea that nothing can ever change and everything's forever bad, and this idea that your past will always determine you, when it's not. Again, if I lived by that idea that I had before, that, oh, I was a horrible child, means I'm gonna be a horrible teenager, I'm gonna be a horrible adult, which is simply not true. You can always change for better. Obviously, it does not eliminate the bad things that you did. It doesn't eliminate all that. It doesn't magically, completely transform you. But even so, though it takes time, and you can't, I'm not saying that you can erase the past, because you can't erase the past, but you can still change, and you can use your past experience in order to change for something better, instead of staying in your room and crying about what a horrible human being you are, because that's yeah, it's not gonna do anything. And also for me, my parents have been a little strict when I was growing up, and obviously that kind of affected me. I've always felt like I didn't fit in with other kids because I was not allowed to do as much as they could, and I didn't have money and I didn't have anything. But again, as the years passed, I realized that I can't keep submitting to this. I can't keep living like that. So I just, if you want freedom, you have to be able to fight for it. You have to be able to rebel for it. I mean, it hurts at first when you get punished and you get yelled at and all that. But eventually, if you want freedom and you want to live your life, you have to be able to fight for it and try to get it. Because if you do nothing, then nothing's gonna change. And I think that is something that a lot of people just can't accept. They can't accept that in a lot of the times the reason nothing changes is their own unwillingness, unwillingness to do anything. Because again, anyone can change. Anyone, absolutely anyone can change. Obviously, I'm not talking about like rapists or murderers, but most of us are just normal human beings who happen to kind of do something bad in the past or have a bad past, with trauma and stuff. But it doesn't mean that you can't change, and there's always hope in the future, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Um, and I think one thought that really helped me and still helps me is that I think even if everything falls apart, even if I lose absolutely everything that I own, I lose everything, I lose my family, I lose my friends, I lose everything, I can always start again. I can always do something, and I think that really helps me when I think that way, because personally I have been through, as I said, a lot of change. So I have lost a lot and I have gained a lot and all that, and I just realized that I shouldn't be afraid of changing. I shouldn't be afraid of losing something, if that means that I get freedom. If if I have to cut off people that I love, I'm sorry, I'm a little sick today. But if I have to cut off people that I love in order to be happy, in order to feel safe and happy and live with myself, then I would do that. I mean, uh, yeah, you just have to realize that you shouldn't hide yourself and hide your happiness in order to please other people. You shouldn't have to submit to a ton of rules that you don't like. You shouldn't have to do all that, especially when you're like nearly an adult, like especially if you're like 17, 18, 19, 20. You're your own person. You should be able to live as you want to. And for a long time, I've been hiding myself because I was so afraid that other people will hate me, and I was so afraid that no one will ever love me, and I was told so many mean things. But in the end, it doesn't matter how much I cry, how much sadness I feel, because those people will never give a shit. Those people will never look at me and see a human being in me. They will forever hate me. So why should I change, and why should I try to gain their love if they cannot love me at all? That's kind of my thought process, and I think that a lot of people need to hear this, especially with people who, for example, are gay and they have parents who don't support them. You shouldn't. Okay, I will put it simple. If your parents or anyone that you love, your friends, your partner, anyone, if they cannot accept you and they cannot love you for who you are, then you don't need them, because staying with them only hurts you more. Because you can't change, and if they can't accept it, well, it just shows that they don't actually love you, because people who actually love you will accept you. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts process. That's, again, what I'm saying right now is kind of just a random rant, but the thoughts that I'm saying right now, they can help me through a lot of stuff. Um, Honestly, I used to be really clingy with people. I used to fight over attention. I used to fight over every little bit of love and attention, even if that meant that I had to lie, or I had to change myself, or I had or all that stuff that made me feel bad. But in the end, again, you realize that those people, like, no matter how much you change and no matter how much you try to appeal to them, they will never love you. It doesn't matter what you do, because they will always just stay with you for a little bit and then leave to someone else who actually fits their standards. And again, I'm not only talking about like lovers or that kind of stuff. It can be parents, friends, literally anyone. I'm just in the end, I'm just the summary of this video. You shouldn't feel pressured to be someone that you're not. You shouldn't feel pressured to leave your hobbies or leave anything that you love for someone. But you also shouldn't have this thought in your head that you can never change. If you can realize that you have been a bad person, and you can realize that some of the things that you did are bad, or realize that the way you live you don't like it, you should be able to change it. Um, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. You shouldn't be afraid of changing. You shouldn't be afraid of actually living a life, because, well, what's the point then? What's the point of living if you can't do anything? What's the point of living if you're constantly scared or you're constantly sad? It's just not a life, really. So in the end, my point is that just just do what you want to do. The consequences, I mean, yeah, sometimes they can be really bad, but in the end, time heals everything. In the end, even with the worst consequences ever, you will get out of it. The meaning with life is just to live it as you want and live as happy as you can. And if people around you can't accept it, or they will purposely try to ruin your life over that, then you don't need them, and you should, just leave and do what the fuck you do, whatever the fuck you want to do. Um, yeah, that's also